Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. What is up, family? It is episode 84 of the Rap Music Plug podcast. I am blessed to have with me today a man who wears many hats. He's wearing one right now, but he wears multiple metaphorically. Mastermind of PTP, an extremely essential collective of creative minds. He's also an incredible producer himself under the name King Vision Ultra, and has created some great work both as a solo artist and as a collaborator, particularly the one that introduced me to him and all of his work, An Unknown Infinite with AMANI, which if anybody hasn't checked it out, check the Essentials post. I had that on my website this summer that just commemorated an incredibly good record. And then that's not all. He also is an incredible visual design artist that has styled so many projects that it's like impossible to count. Everything good always has a gang version, it seems, these days. So without further ado, I welcome GENG PTP, aka King Vision Ultra. How's it going, man?
Yo, peace. Yeah, it goes well. Gee, it goes well. Are you good?
Yeah.
You good out there? Yeah. Word.
Yeah.
Word. Thank you for having me on, G. And also I gotta, just say thank you for that. That lovely like piece of writing that you put on I believe it's like the 1 year anniversary on the album.
Yeah,
so,
it was roughly at that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was really special to have as sort of like another installment in the like documentative side of that world. So I really appreciate that. We both really appreciate that. And you killed it too. Like you really put your foot in that. So big up to you, my G.
Yeah, much love.
No,
I want to start, we'll obviously get into Unknown Infinite in detail, but I want to first start just something more broad. And that is why you, just generally speaking, gravitate to hip hop, because since day one of me interacting with your art, but then communicating with you directly, eventually, it's abundantly clear that you just really love and appreciate the culture, like more than almost anybody I can think of. It's just like everything you say, it just exudes that, And so I want to start the conversation around that. Like, what is it about, like maybe it's specific aspects of hip hop culture that you just really love? Like, what is it that is so special to you?
Well, I guess for a bit of context or whatever, I'm a native New Yorker long prior to the internet. So I grew up with this. Like I grew up with hip hop. Like I didn't fall into it or whatever. Like I grew up with this shit. Now that's not to say that I had it outside of my window via Park Jam. I wasn't in the South. I wasn't in the Bronx like that. I didn't grow up in the Bronx. I'm from Moneymaker, Manhattan. I was too young to go to like Harlem World or the Rooftop. I was born in 81. So by my birth year, the Cold Crush tape had already happened or whatever, like the Cold Crush battle with Fantastic Five at I believe it was Harlem World. So like there weren't stations that played what would be known as hip hop when I was coming up until there are various short little mix shows basically that did it, but there weren't any stations that were like dedicated to that. So like the access was far and few kind of between, unless like you sought it out, you know what I mean? Yeah. So something about it when I first heard, that it was like Salt and Pepper and like Fresh Prince and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, things of that nature, definitely Run DMC, definitely the Fat Boys, you know, things like that. That's what kind of captivated me to that point of like utter magnetization. And then after that, it was just a wrap. Like Video Music Box was on TV after school every day, and I'd tap in with Uncle Ralph McDaniels and you know, catch a glimpse of so much culture, not even just, you know, what would be known as hip hop culture or whatever, but also just, I mean, he'd be playing stuff like Cameo, he'd be playing stuff like, you know, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, you know, Talking Heads, shit like that, basically, you know. But yeah, I mean, once I tapped in and saw like De La and Public Enemy, again, it was a wrap. It was something about the rhythm, something about the drum, something about, you know, the way that the language, the words were drumming, you know what I mean? That's what really got me. So from like growing up with it and being from the so-called birthplace of it, you know, that's why I give so much of a fuck. And like having like had time in the shit too, like not just like from a listening standpoint or whatever, like not a casual listener or fan by any means. Like I was the only child, so I am an only child. So like if I'm gonna like find something to devote, like that was my like the shit that I came home to and the shit that I would daydream about. And you know what I'm saying? Like whether I'm in like French class or something, I'm writing my composition, I'm like writing rhymes in my composition book in like junior high, or you know what I'm saying? Or like just like writing a list of like my favorite rappers and like comparing it with like my peoples and said, yes, again, in junior high. And then like taking that to like being like mixtapes. And, you know, before that was like just cassette, just making tapes off the radio, like pause tapes and things of that nature. And then, you know, then being like, everyone being like, yo, you need to become a DJ because like, just get a setup. You do this shit. And like, you know, this shit, like you're a you are a liner notes, like nerd, but they obviously weren't saying it like that. They're just like, yo, like you just coming through with like tapes full of songs that just, you put people on to shit. And I love putting people on to music. So, you know, they got my first setup in 95, and then like working after school at like a ophthalmologist's office, filing after like for like 2 hours for like $2-3 an hour. It took a while for that, but you know, it was a minute. Maybe it was like $5, but you know, anyway. But yeah, that's really, you know, and then by 95, 96, again, like I started DJing, I'd been rapping, probably started dancing around that time too, like really dancing, like breaking and whatnot. The only thing I didn't really fuck with too crazy was graph, as far as like doing it myself. I was a little lackluster in terms of like my like hand-eye you know, control when it comes to the drawing illustrative aspect. So visual art, that type of visual art, I didn't catch on or whatever. Like, but you know, then falling into like this underground shit, or like so-called underground shit, like the thing that was independent hip hop before it became indie hip hop or whatever. So it was like, you know, going to Fat Beats, like looking up places like when there was like early internet, like internet 1.2 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it was just like, okay, dial up. And then you get on your browser and you look up like, yo, like where record stores or like hip hop record stores in New York City. And then it's like Beat Street up, you know, over in Brooklyn, and Music Factory uptown in the Bronx. Harlem Music Hut was another place. There were mad spots, but then Fat Beats was this one place, and it was on the east side still. That was the first location before Bobito Garcia, I guess, took it over when they moved to the west side. He took it over and created Footwork. That was like his brick and mortar. But yeah, going there for the first time and like just getting wax, and like literally like Mr. Sinister from the X-Men is like working the counter. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, you know, I heard a Rock Raider battle set from the DMC that he won, I think in 95, when he won the DMC. And I think it was in London, I feel like. That's a DJ mix competition or whatever. The
Okay.
disco mix competition. But yeah, Rock Raider, rest in power. He was from the X-Men or the Executioners, and bodied the set. That was like a big battery on my back. Like, okay, what is this turn? Like, what is this? Like beat juggling, like taking a beat out of two instrumentals, crazy. So like, I was like, word, okay, I gotta get nice like that. But then also, I just gotta get more records. I heard like a Black Alicious
Ooh,
snippet
that's
on
fire.
like in like real audio format, and from probably the same site. It was like this kid who went to Howard, and it was like his like Angel Fire site or some shit. You know what I mean? It was like it's like personal website, and he was just really into like hip hop, or of a certain like format or whatever, or certain energy.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was like he had She's a Terrorist from the Melodica EP, the shit where Gift of Gab is rhyming over the How Many MCs, the Black
Yeah,
Moon instrumental, killing that shit. And like
I love that track.
I ran that shit to the ground. It was a snippet. It was like the first three quarters of that verse. And I would run that shit. Cause it's like, what is this? Like, what is this new? So just buying records. And then one day I bought Fun Crusher, the EP from Company Flow, like the transparent vinyl, double vinyl EP that
You
I think it
still
was
got
double
that?
vinyl.
You still got that?
Nah, I sold that shit on eBay for like bread.
Okay, I was
Like
gonna
in like
say that's gonna be worth like that's a
yeah,
grail.
yeah.
That's a grail right there.
I feel, part of me wants to kick myself for doing that but I also like I did need I was like living off of like my records in college, like selling them
Hmm.
shits on eBay, and like really like sold like crates on crates of like rare whatever, like first pressings of like underground, like all the Fondlem, like early Fondlem
Oh,
Grail shit, all the like the Juggernaut, Sly and Yeshua, probably some Doom, but I kept those. I kept like one of each, if not
hmm.
two. I would buy shit in triples sometimes because you were cutting them up, so I didn't want to like ruin them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
you had access to like those OG record stores before it even got popular again to like
Right.
nowadays where it's just like they're getting just completely ransacked by everybody, especially in New York, I'm sure. So you got to even see a company flow in a record shop to me is like in any format is like seems like you're seeing a unicorn. I can never imagine like ever
Facts.
encountering that one in the
Facts. Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, it was just that thing of like participating in it. Like being like going out and going to places. Like I started going to shows when I was like 15. You know what I mean? Like 15, 16, definitely by
Hmm.
16. And going to the spaces like the Wetlands or like Tramps or definitely the New Rican Poets Cafe, which is like the spot that was like the spot twice, if not three times, if not more a month. Like Bobito
Hmm.
hosted an open mic. There was an open turntable. Eventually, there was an open turntable mic night there, which was I performed at a couple times. Yeah, it was just like it was madness. I don't know. It was just different. So you had to like leave the house to like get a flyer to know what the fuck was going on. Like there was no like way of like just going online on your phone or what. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
was no one had a cell phone. Like I don't know. I mean, cell phones definitely were not smartphones. So
Yeah.
you know. Anyway, point being, yeah, you actually had to go out. So like me being out there, like I was an intern for Ozone official recordings. So like Company Flows, Amici, who runs like Ozone, like their original like imprint. The
Nice.
imprint that released them prior to Raucous. So like I was like throwing up stickers all over town of like Fun Crusher, the LP, like before it came out. So I would just go out every day. So I was like that was my if I had any sort of graffiti career, like career in graph, like my shit was just like throwing slaps up, basically,
Yeah.
just doing stickers and shit. But yeah, it
When
was
you got into like get into your like first shows and just starting like you said this gig that you had before with Ozone, like was it the kind of thing where as soon as you kind of got into this space with these kinds of people, did it just feel like, oh damn, like this is home, like this is where I feel comfortable, like it's like brand new but it feels so familiar and comfortable.
yeah, I say so. I say there was definitely an element of that, especially as like a teenager. You know what I'm saying? Because like you're just looking for something to not necessarily latch on to,
Would be a
but
part of
like
like a
yeah,
family
to
community. Yeah.
exactly. You're looking to like fit in somewhere because you're always trying to define yourself and or redefine yourself. You know, I'm not that cat who I was last year. I just like, you know, you're breaking records that you bought the 2 years before that over your leg. Like, fuck that. Nah, this is where I'm at now. You know, it's just like, you know, it's weird. It's like, it's that growing up like that, especially as such a head bust. Like, I don't even know how kids are doing it. You know, I mean, this is not some weird like old head type comment or whatever, but like, you know, like it's just I can't even imagine how it is these days with like all the access that cats have now, folks have, you know what I mean? But like back then it was just even back then it was just like, for someone like me, I was just like trying to figure out where the fuck I fit in and how to signify what I was about, you know what I'm saying? So I was just like, nah, like it's fatigues all day, like, you know what I mean, like army suits all day, these Gore-Tex boots I had, and just like just going, like having a backpack on full of stickers and you know, whatever, a tape or two, or selling my mixtapes at school, just like going, and then like going to shows and having a camera at shows and documenting that shit, you know what I'm saying? So whether mostly video camera, but I did snap some flicks too, just because I like found a camera in the cab one time, like a little point and shoot. Got a couple good flicks, but mostly the gusto was like me having a camera at shows and like being at like those early like MF Doom shows, or like Adam's fam shit prior to like Canox, you know, like all that, that era. So yeah. So yeah, finding a little like tribe to fit in with or whatever. And at that point too, it was just like there was that shift in major label rap. Like it wasn't the same thing as it was when it was like 88, 89, you know, even 93, for instance, you know what I mean? Like by 96, we're talking about, you know, the entering the shiny suit era and all that, and then shit just became like I didn't go to clubs like that. I wasn't like clubbing, and I wasn't trying to like do this to like, I wasn't trying to like wear expensive clothes in that kind of way, you know what I mean? Like utterly expensive European clothes. I mean, Guess is European, whatever, you know what I mean? I'm just saying like Versace and shit like that. So that I didn't relate to that. So it was definitely going back to like sort of like who's on the ground still doing the shit, and like who's also like welcoming, you know, like I found all that stuff pretty inaccessible.
It's hard
for
to
a
relate
minute
to that.
At least for a moment, you know. Later on, you know, you grow up and you're like, oh, like some of these are like really excellent records, like you know, like I'll listen to some May shit, you know what I'm saying? Like it's fine.
One thing I find also pretty dope about you is that, like, as we talked about it, like in the intro, when I talked about your many hats, like you contribute so much to like the totality of hip hop, not just like the music, but also like visual, physical, like the distribution, the design work. And I just hear from like many people, like too many to name, that like they always like name drop you about like, oh, like he helped me out just like informally, like just through some like mentorship type shit. Like I find that is really good. And when I speak to you particularly, when I hear you talk, I get this like overarching feeling that you have like this sense of duty almost. Like you feel like, I get this impression that you feel like you have a duty to like give back to hip hop, and give back. So like, where do you think this duty came from? This sense of duty?
Right. Because I had that, you know, like when I was going out, when I was finding myself in spaces where I would just be going to some places, shows, or like even just like things that turn into like more communal events or communal, like almost like communal hall meetings or whatever, like a town hall meeting, but like amidst like folks who are, you know, either, you know, recognized leaders or organizers in that realm of like people. I would, you know, I'd sometimes I'd be by myself and I just have to shut up and listen, you know. And you know, folks who are older than I was, like, just were generous enough to take me under their wing, you know. I mean, even the cats, like, I was just, because I would never really, I would like half hang out with kids my age, but I'd hang out with like folks who were like 5-10 years older than I was too, just because like it just made sense to me. I had an older cousin who was like 5 years older than me, and or I have still. You know, when I was like 10, he was 15. He was like an older sibling, older brother figure to me. And from that point on, like that was a seed that was planted by then. So, you know, I'm going out now. I'm 15, I'm 16, 17. Obviously by 17, I'm in Adams already. And, you know, I was the youngest member in that crew. And, you know, cats were super generous with their space, you know, and I just had, you know, and also that's the thing too. It's like you learn about like that interaction, not transaction, that interaction where it's like, you know, folks aren't trying to be slime. Like not everyone's trying to be a slime ball, you know what I'm saying? And like get you drunk and get you high, get you to smoke some shit or whatever. Like, you know, because there is that danger. Like there is that danger of like falling in with the wrong folks and they just like don't know, like they're just like foul people and like or whatever. And they just like don't care, or like they're trying to like use you or groom, you know what I mean? Like even groom you, whatever. You know, it gets wild or whatever. But I was fortunate enough to like be around stand-up people, like really genuinely like good folks. And you know, they would like pass me jewels. So, you know, like as someone, you know, still doing things today or like finding my way and around these like years and decades, whatever, and finding myself in the midst of various circles of folks, you know, various, I guess, so-called communities, or now, you know, like I like to refer to it intentionally as coalition, where that means action, not just signaling this idea of a group of people who know each other, but like actually like folks who are like actively like working with each other and like listening to each other and being transparent, you know, and like having those like quote unquote having the conversation, but like actually like trying to find solutions to or whatever. Like that's the thing. It's not just about having the conversation. You could talk all day. That don't mean you're gonna get to an answer or whatever. But like we're building, you know, and like for me, I just realized like, well, shit, you know, I turned 40 a year, you know, almost not a year ago, but like earlier this year. So it's like even before then, I was just like, nah, like I am, you know, I'm around folks who are like almost like basically like the children of the folks who are just a few years older than I am. You know what I'm saying? Like the sons and daughters and so forth of folks who are like were elders to me. But like then now once you get past like a 25 or 30 or something, like that person who seemed, you know, who was 21 when you were 17 or 23 when you were 17 isn't that much older anymore. Y'all are all grown, you know what I mean? Yeah,
totally.
It decrease like that margin decreases. So your like like the way that you relate to the world is a lot similar, I feel like. So you know, you reach that sort of congruence, and then from that point on or whatever, you just like, all right, well, it's either like I stay with just like all older people or like people my age and whatever, and hey, that's a thing, whatever, people do that. But like I just I feel like for me personally, I feel like there's something that, because I got it when I was coming up, there's a power to like passing on information and knowledge, turning knowledge to wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Because like you have a lived experience, literally, like you cannot fake you can't fake that lived experience. Like you can't like rush time in order to get more experience in something. Like you just gotta live the shit.
And that has value.
Like,
that's mad
exactly
value.
It has value. And like, you know, who am I to be like hoarding the shit and being like, oh, like you gotta learn to live, you know, you gotta learn and fall on your ass yourself or whatever. And it's not even also, to be clear, it's not some like savior shit where it's like, hey everyone, like let me school you on something. Like nah, it's literally like, yo, we are all here learning from each other. Like I've learned mad shit from folks who are like half my age, you know what I'm saying? Totally. And I don't care to like uphold some idea of like my ego as like an adult or like as an elder, like that side of being like an elder, like that's some old head shit. Like you being like, you know, so-called old head shit where like you're just, your ego is telling you that you got to be right all the time. You got to be the one speaking and leading all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not what I don't fuck with that. My thing is like, we're all literally in converse. We're all literally building together. So like each one teach one type shit. So yeah, I don't really see my place is kind of like, that's my shit. Like that's my place, you know, period. I find a lot of like fulfillment and I find a lot of joy, honestly, and just like in passing on and just passing on lessons and building as well. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, that's why like I gravitated towards the teaching shit once like my 9 to 5 dissolved. But that's a whole other topic, you know what I mean? But that's why, yeah. Yeah, I think that's my answer to that.
No, I love that. There's a lot there. You're speaking of coalitions, like that's a nice that's a nice way I would honestly describe like PTP in a way, like even just like, because I wanted to get to something in particular about kind of like the fact that there's so many different kinds of like aesthetic styles on PTP. Like that was probably the first thing that surprised me, because like I said, Unknown Infinite was my introduction to your music and like just anything you do. I just assumed this like all these music was going to be just like hip hop, maybe experimental hip hop, but like just hip hop mainly. But there's like experimental metal, there's like noise, and it's dope. And I do feel like there's like some kind of common bond, even if it's not aesthetic necessarily, although it could be as well. Like what do you think is the foundational like trait or traits that you're looking for when you collaborate with an artist to put something under that PTP umbrella?
Can we have conversations and eat a meal together is first and foremost. You know, like I don't go to the studio and just be like, hey, let's tap in and let's do a track together and like work. Like tapping in with each other. When I say that shit to you, I mean like you might come to the studio, we'll just talk shit and like watch YouTube videos or, you know, like watch a movie together or something. Like I'm not interested in like this like transactional. I don't give a fuck about, I mean, rather like I find it's unhealthy for me. Like it's damaging to me. Like when I like have these transactional like relationships and things of that nature, just because like I'm just trying to get away from all that. Just because like that's not how like you work with your neighbor. So like how are you going to work with someone? How are you going to like build with someone and treat them the same way or treat them less, you know, any less than that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't know. I mean, I can go deep. I can go too long on this shit. But like basically, like for like PTP or whatever, I don't have contracts. I don't care about providing. I don't care about maintaining some similarity in terms of form or appearance. You know, musical form, whatever. I'm more interested in, you know, where's your heart at? And like, what are you about? And, you know, and even if like we don't vibe, it doesn't mean you're a bad person necessarily either. And that doesn't mean like I dub you and like you're just like you're out of here. It's just like, you know, some people don't click or whatever, and that's fine too. But like for a collaboration or whatever, it's like it's a conversation. Like it's an ongoing like back and forth or whatever. So that for me, that's how it's about energy. So that was always my previous answer to this type of question. Like I just go off of energy, and like it's a similar energy, if anything. That's it, you know. I've noticed like when people talk about these like mind molding, historic, biggest, or whatever grand adjectives they want to
fucking I don't even know what that means.
well, yeah, but you know they throw these like certain labels that are doing like the things like the most forward thinking hip hop and blah blah blah. And like you know, not that PTP is even that, but PTP certainly has that. And like I'd be remiss to even to like not gun for the people who are on, you know, in the crew, you know what I'm saying? Like, and this is literally just a crew thing. Like, it's just like, yeah, coalition. Like, it's just like, yo, if you want to throw the flag up, all you have to do is just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we're cool. Like, you could rep whenever you need to rep. So it's like, in that way, it's similar to some graph shit. Although, like, not to be confused with the graph, there's a writer out here who does his thing and throws up PTP. It's not the same thing, but we spoke, and it's each of us, we spoke and had like a wonderful conversation and built, and it's fine, it's all good. No one's trying to sue nobody or whatever. That's some corny shit, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day or whatever, like for me, it's just like, yo, anyone who I rock with, like, if you want to throw that up, throw it up. You know what I mean? Like, if you're out there doing some fugazi shit or whatever, like, someone's going to approach you on that, and we can address that and see how that plays out. That's kind of it. So for me, like, PTP is kind of fluid in that way, as far as like how people engage with like the binaries of categorization, you know what I mean, or the binary of categorization. But like at the end, it's an energy thing. It's like, again, like, yeah, I'll just keep it at that. It's an energy thing. It's a coalition thing. And, it's, I don't know, yo. It's
No, it feels like there's like a common, like, not that specifically, but it feels like there's like a common worldview almost, or like to where you said, like, I feel like any of these artists could go and like get some food together, even though they just live in different musical worlds potentially. True. I would say also like a sense of like innovation and like pushing the envelope, I think, is pretty clear in a lot of the records that I've heard from PTP as well. But yeah, I like that it's not very hard and fast, binary, rigid. It's a lot, rigid. Fluid. Yeah.
Word. Yeah, I mean, everyone on here is a visionary. That's how I see them.
Yeah.
And like, I hope that they self-actualize and view themselves as such as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it's a bunch of self-actualizers. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying? So like, and like, we're all happy to help each other do that as well. Even if like folks don't know necessarily, it's under the same bridge. It's like, yo, like, or it's all in the strength of like that understanding. So like, if not me, but if like, say like Masai doesn't know, my homie Jeremy, but like who I've done mad work with and used to have a doomy, I don't know, wall of noise project with, called Worm Watcher. And one person gets the cosign, and Jeremy doesn't know Messiah or whatever, but it's just like, boom, all of a sudden under the sort of like the auspices or whatever, like the guy, like just like the umbrella, for lack of a better term, of PTP, you get that sort of understanding that flows through first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, all right, like, it's like, it's not even not just a cosign. It's just like, there's more than just it's more than a cosign, I guess. I don't know. Just call it that. That's the new slogan. PTP. It's more than a cosign.
More than a cosign. Yeah, I love it. So, yo, let's get into like, I think we were remiss if we talked about like the history of PTP though. Like, what was the initial vision, and has it changed for PTP, and just how generally has it evolved over the years?
It's definitely changed. It definitely evolved. It originally was like, I mean, the mission kind of stayed the same in that way, where it's just like, again, like, bringing together, first and foremost, bringing together folks who honor the build, you know what I mean? Like, who are about something and about maybe the same set of things, but also willing to, on their own time too, you know what I mean? So, I don't, whatever, like hive mind or whatever. I mean, everything can be hive mind to a certain extent or whatever, like groupthink to a certain extent. I'm not talking necessarily about that when I say like everyone's about the same shit. It's not, again, like literally, like, there's people on their own time, and like, but we could all be in a room together, and somehow there's some, you know, mutual understanding as to why we're here and we're like what the intention is. You know what I'm saying? I think intentionality,
Yeah.
shared intentionality is like the sort of the name of the game. And it started, you know, as a blog, really, like as a blog spot, and just like writing stories, and it's kind of like sort of like redocumenting or documenting just various music, various forms of music from like the 90s, and then starting from the 90s, but then like getting to like more modern day sort of modalities or whatever. Like, you know, this was 09, I want to say.
Okay.
So, but the mission was always to have like to create some sort of like bridging system where like this could be distribution, this could be, you know, a means to put out music, put out new music. And that eventually happened with the first release, which was Gorgeous Children. They're self-titled. That's Face Vega, who was the MC, and Gila, who used to go by Gila Monster, who's now like released a bevy of instrumental albums. I think he's might be on XL now, or I don't know. He's on one of those labels, Lex 4AD, one of those labels. But yeah, and that was like some left field, so-called left field, you know, or experimental sort of. It was like Camp Low and like 1017 Brick Squad put together. which in like 2011, 2012, I think it was 2012, I want to say, makes sense. And well, but also it was like a head bust still. It's like, okay, like we love Rock Marciano, but we also fuck with like Gucci and Wack or whatever, right? So yeah, and then from there, just, you know, there was a good moment of like rhythmic, like got into like, I was really into like footwork from like Chicago, like, you know, all the Tech Life stuff, like DJ Rashad and Spin. My homie Josh put me on to a lot of those things. Those things. And then, you know, they would be coming through playing like 285 Kent, these like little venues over here. And I just like, was crazy to me. I was like, yo, what is this? It's super technical, just ill ass, you know, some people call it club music. Some people call it like battle dance music, whatever. But like, you know, there's a dancing, it's a movement related culture too. Like as far as that music goes, like you don't have footwork without also having the dancers involved. Much like, yeah, plenty of other things. And then got deep into sort of like the more rhythm based sounds, but like dark, you know, like dark, I don't know, dark stuff, but like, you know, like just anything that seemed like heavy to me. I always had this like
heavy,
I had a thing for like heavy. You know, I was a child of like Black Sabbath and like all that shit too. So at the same time as like Isaac Hayes and you know, whatever, having like a couple Thelonious Monk or like Miles Davis records in the crib, Coltrane live in Seattle type shit, you know what I mean? But then also, yeah, my pops was like, he had like, I stole all those Quincy Jones records, and you know what I mean? Like I would steal my pops records when I was by the time I got to high school, and like was like, wait, I'm getting turntables. So that heaviness from then on carried over. Me growing up on Public Enemy and Wu-Tang eventually later, you know, like that all transferred over to everything else. And then it was just like, well, you know, a lot of rhythm track kind of stuff. And then I was getting into like, well, what does it sound like? What can we do with like longer narratives and, you know, like albums? Because a lot of these would start as 12 inches, like, all right, like 2 tracks here, 2 tracks on the other side. And I was just releasing them on vinyl. And then that kind of got crazy. It's real tedious and just like, you know, it's tough too, because like you're introducing like newer names to the shit, and like, you have 300 records to sell, and it's not, you know, and you're a new so-called label at that point, right? But then later on, things connected. Things started to make sense. Like it was just like, wait, like this all can live together, and that's, you know, sooner or later it was like, I don't know. I think PTP really, really, really hit. I mean, has always had a stride. Like, I feel like there's never been a year or a moment where like I was putting out some whack shit or whatever, some wacky shit. But like, yeah, I feel like once it got to like 2015, 2016, it was kind of a wrap. It was just like, okay, like, nah, like
we're going,
this is, and then that was when like the greater, like the, almost like the new like whatever the version is now, I feel like it started back then. It was just like, all right, like we can have all these sounds no matter how disparate exists, because it's not
together.
about exactly. It's not about the sound. It's not about like the form of music. It's once again, it's about the intentionality behind it, and and also like about like the folks making the shit too, and like giving them the space and their own space to like do their thing as well. So, I wanted to honor the people by giving them, helping to load up the resources and pass that over to them as well, because by that point it was like I was doing them, I'm doing all the press shit and all the other stuff like myself anyway, like distribution stuff, whatever. So it was like, all right, and just found a new form, kept updating that model as also things have changed, so it's like the gears are looking a little different, or like the mechanism might be a little different than it was in 2016 as it is today, but still the same sort of like, still the same under the same hood, so to speak, still, same vehicle. So
yeah. And one of the ways obviously you're doing that is the visual work, and that's something that some people may not even necessarily hear about, although I feel like you probably would get it pretty quick, but you may not even know PTP, but you're going to see GENG PTP versions of like a cassette, let's say, or you'll see that you did the design for some physical merch of any sort. It's becoming more common. They're always fucking great. But I do find what's really interesting is that like with all of the work I've seen you do visually, there's something about it that like feels like you, like tangible you, like it's very distinct, although like both like aesthetically you have a certain thing that I'm not into that world to know what that thing is, how you describe it, but like there's like it feels like there's like a theme almost, like I'm thinking of Unknown Infinite, the album cover, like that cover, like the initial one for the digital, like it tends to, and it's not just the only one you've done, it tends to be kind of this feeling of like familiar but not, and like I can't, it's like a lucid dream. If people didn't read the article I did on the record, like I kept thinking of that with the sound and the album artwork too. It's that feeling of like you're in a lucid dream where you like kind of look at something, and when you get close it disappears because it's not reality. I don't know what that is, but it's super freaking intriguing to me. So like what is there some kind of like central inspiration that you have for like your visual work, or like an idea that you like to explore?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, I think there's a thread that carries through. The thread, I would say, one, challenging space and similar to everything on, similar to how like PTP rolls out as far as like on the label side of things, or even on the show side of things, whatever, the curatorial side of things, if you want to put it like that and sound like a smart ass, but like, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of the counter cultural, like challenging, like anti-traditional approach to things. Like I'm not interested in like falling in like the rap album that has the thing that the other rap albums have. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not interested in like the rap album that looks like every other rap album because it has like either the whatever trope. I'm not interested in like visual tropes. Most of the visual tropes I see in this so-called current underground or like throughout time, I'm just not. What I'm interested in is like breaking, like literally like breaking space, challenging space, and by that also like the viewer space. By that I mean like what your expectations would be or are when you're listening to this music. Like what do you see, what do you envision in your head as like either the potential for the cover art or the music video or any other visual aspect to the thing, right? A lot of that thinking and like visual language, at least as far as like origins, come from, and sort of like I want to pay homage to someone like Ramel's, like actually not even someone, like I want to pay homage to like Ramel Z. You know what I'm saying? Like he to me was was my like, I didn't know Ram like that. I built with folks who like my elders were his peoples.
Oh, okay.
So it was just, but due to whatever, I found his like approach and the way he would speak about like visual language and create and weaponizing visuals and weaponizing alphabets and like letters and make, like literally making an or a K into a weapon, that goes from like the graffiti arrow and then turning that into like a missile, turning that into like a warhead, and then turning like doing like the whole like hieroglyphic shit.
Yeah.
But like flipping it into like some like cyberpunk like futurism. I mean, he had this whole theory, or like he wrote about this theory and also spoke about it kind of ad nauseum. Like whenever you'd hear him speak, it would just be this thing of like, yo, like, something panzerism, like, just he had different names for it, but essentially like the weaponizing of like letters and through that then, or in sequence, then it would be space after that. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, I always took that as like, that was super affirming to me, because it was just like, oh shit, like you can do more than just go for, ride a trope or like become a cartoon, basically. Like I'm not interested in any of that. You know what I mean? Like I don't care about the mob. Like I don't care about Scarface or any of that dumb shit. Like that shit was corny to me, like even back in the day. So, but also like I just thought about it, like what was one of the things that defied the sort of tradition in my like so-called childhood or whatever, my teen years, it was my formative years, it was the purple tape. Like the reason why Raekwon's first album, Only Built for Cuban Links, in 95 was so sort of like, well, what has a nickname is because it came out on a purple shell cassette tape, and everything else was clear and gray. Everything was gray and white, gray ass cassette shell with like white text on it, and had no like design mind kind of put to it. So for me, like like it was just, that's why like I'm like, oh my gosh, like
no, but I think that's what you're saying. That's like so interesting, because like using like this idea you're talking about, like, oh, whoever like created the purple tape design, like they broke that space, they broke that like trope of just someone not even thinking, like they have no like, if I was back then young, old enough to actually like be listening to cassettes regularly, the act of like taking the cassette out, looking at it, putting it in, had nothing. There was nothing of value, like nothing of like interest there. But someone just created something out of thin air, theoretically, to now, like obviously you would know more than anybody. Like the idea of how the cassette looks is like a draw. It's like, oh shit, this is transparent pink. All this design is so cool. I'm gonna buy it. Like before, it was like, what does it sound like? Like, what's the music? Like you added an entire dimension just off of that decision. That's really cool.
It's also like nodding to the physical ritual of it too, because now you're actually like invested in like what this thing looks like when you have it in your hands, and that's like far more intriguing than just something that's same old on whatever level, like. So even now, like, now, like, I'm not really trying. I might have done, maybe I did one thing on a purple cassette, and that was due to my friend Yata or Ricky, their first cassette, Spirit Said Yes, was on purple tape, and same shell as like the purple tape rather. And it was just something that it was like a fun little thing that we both like. I went to their like Facebook page, and they had like their top banner, and it wasn't like a hip hop reference either. Their just top banner was like a purple tape pile, and I was just like, wait, it was like when we first started speaking, and I was just like, wait, what? And they were just like, yo, I want to put out a purple cassette. I'm like, do you know what the name of the like what PTP stands for? Because by that point I was just calling it PTP. It wasn't even breaking it back down. I like elongated it again just to like give it meaning. It also means power through people, which speaks to the coalition aspect, right? So so it was just like oh shit, big head bust. But Now I just, I've kind of looked at that that element of the like the physical surface as something that I can play with as well in terms of like design. You know what I mean? So you'll see things that work with like transparencies, like I'll start messing with like 3D kind of design layering work, like where, if you look at the B side of a tape, it's in reverse. But then when you flip it over, you see it through the A side, and the shit is like a 2-layer facing the right way kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I've done that a few times, and used to do shit like where like the text gets revealed when the first side runs out, and there's a little thing that was hiding behind the tape otherwise, like the actual
that's so cool.
Magnetic tape. Yeah, so it's just little shit like that, whatever. But like just really like respecting this, like learning the space to break it. It's all, I'm a hacker, so like that's just all that is, like hip hop is hacking. So it's just like you're constantly like told you're not able to do this because of the technological limitations or whatever. And what I learned in hip hop was like, fuck out of here. Like, no, we can do this however we need to do this. And that's why everything is the way it is currently, because literally decades of people hacking various technologies to get to wherever the fuck we're at, or to get wherever they were trying to go. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even linear. It's not linear where it's just like, oh, like things that Rem LZ does, like it's because that's why everything is the way it is now. I'm just like, nah, but he did his thing, he did his unique thing. And, I took notice of it and loved it, and found it inspiring for me. And just as far as like theory. And, I don't think my work looks like Rem LZ's art at all. Like I can't even draw a lip for the life of me. You know what I mean? But I could do ill shit with like letters, like typeface, glyphs, you know what I mean? And textures and whatnot, and kind of like flip it in my own way. And also like hardcore punk, like hardcore punk 7 inches from like the 90s. That whole Xerox style is like, I love that. I love that shit. So like kind of like a mixture of those two, I think would be like a good backbone to my, whatever, my design pedigree or whatever. So.
Yeah. You, when you're saying about like how it's not linear, how like, oh, Rem LZ did this, so therefore everybody does this, and they did this, and all of that. I know that like, I think like humans generally, we just have like a tendency to like want to find, like I actually just side note, I had like a really, feel like a very like almost like spiritual realization last night about just kind of how my mind works. And it's not that unique. It's like a lot of people where we just like, we're so biased to find like a perfect answer to everything. Like, okay, this thing happened in my life because I didn't do this or did do this. And we just like can't deal with the fact that like it's just so complex and nuanced, and like many different things happened at the same time and just combined into some other reaction, and that's what happened. But
absolutely. I mean, to add on to that or whatever, like, yeah, we as, especially like folks who want to be in the critical realm, but I just think, I mean, everyone would be better off if they just kind of through that sort of like indoctrination aspect of definitiveness away. Like, it's like, that's a very like European head ass type shit to be on, where it's just like, oh, like, again, I've said it to some folks already about like, it really, that's some shit where it's like, you want the answer before you ask the question, and before the question is asked. Like, you like this thing of like, yo, I always need to get the information quick, fast. And I need to know. That's like the definitive nature that like gets driven through language too. Like the way like folks talk about shit. That's why, like, we've spoken about this, like whether via the timeline or whatever, like you'll see me talking about something and like being ranty about something or whatever. And then like, but it usually is like about like the way that something is framed and like the limitation or like the restrictive nature of that. And I think that's like a very, very poor way to, for lack of a better term, but like, like, I think that's just that's just not a way to honor the work. Like, why can't it be more open-ended or like non-linear in that way, where it's just like, nah, like this is literally your own personal like summarization, or like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, this is your like, so like you gotta relax when you're talking about like, you know, I mean, I spoke about this shit with Dano and K Diggy on SME's mid-year album thing. It was just like arbitrary ass rating systems, numbers that don't mean shit really. It's just like, who is that? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, who are you trying to appease with this shit? And like, how is that doing anything to celebrate or honor like not only that singular work, but the greater sort of like artistry or creation that also surrounds and from which that stems, you know what I'm saying, from which that's rooted. Like, dogs, there's a lineage, there's a legacy that you're completely like writing out when you're just talking about, oh, this is the best, this is the thing, like this is the, I'm just like, you know, we can get into that shit.
No, and
like,
I actually do want to get into that, because like the other part I want to talk about is just like more generally, without having to make a linear picture, like some of the waves that have kind of developed over the past, I don't know, let's just pick the last decade in the underground, that I think is just so interesting. But before we get into that, I want to dive in a bit more to this idea of language, because this is something that when I think about, for instance, one of many aspects that has defined the last few years, particularly, and like it's like underground, but at this point in hip hop, it's like pretty common. Like it's pretty common mainstream too. Just like playing with lengths of projects, and how like I know the long ass albums, although those existed, obviously, like that used to be really common back in the day. Now I feel like it's mostly relegated to the mainstream, people trying to get like just get streams and just hack that. But like the prominence of short albums and like EPs have just become super popular. And the idea of what an album, like what does an album really mean, kind of brings me to this idea of language, because this is something that I know you, like you said, you've talked about this before. The idea of like just having the importance of language and like how you name things, and like the consequences of naming things and like categorizing things, like genre. I know that's something you said to, like, we talked about that, like genre versus calling something an art form, best versus favorite. I struggle with this, because like I'm almost on one hand, like I'm getting what you're saying. The part that I struggle with is like sometimes I find the discussion around like how something should be named, and I'm just going to keep it strictly to music for now. Like I know this is a different story sometimes definitely in other places, but like I find sometimes it just like is having a conversation that isn't adding, it's just getting people upset, and it's like not really going anywhere in terms of having a material like significance on what the music is at the end of the day. And it's something where it's like, if we just kind of let people quote unquote name things, or like identify things the way they want to, then like we can just move on from that conversation and talk about the music. I do see it more valid in other ways, but I feel like this is something, as you say, you would disagree with. So I want like you to expand more about like the importance of why calling something a certain way can like limit it and have like a negative effect.
For certain. I mean, let's be clear too. We're talking about calling something like referring to things in definitives that are not, what is it? Subjective or objective?
Yeah,
like
yeah, that are not calling subjective things definitive. Yeah, that's the problem.
Facts. Right. Yeah. That's why I see as part of the issue, especially as like a cultural critic. It's like you're not honoring lineage from that standpoint on, because then you're trying to like, it's your opinion and you're saying that this thing is canonical by way of you liking it the most.
Yeah.
By using language that says this is the best of the year. Meanwhile, like you have a list that has Freddie Gibbs and Salt at like in like you know right beside right beside each other, and it's just like, what the like, huh? Like that literally is just your taste. So that's literally what the algorithm fed you and you like that day. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, I'd rather keep the shit a little bit more open and just like being like, just literally like, yo, why is it so tough to divest from like the cultural architecture of, you know, of reference or referential language. You know what I'm saying? Because this shit is all this shit is people taking industrialized like ideas and using them in their own sort of on their platform, so to speak, or on their Twitter account or whatever, you know, like it's just like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do it their way. Their way is literally a way of like, it's a way of capital. It's a way of data mining. It's a way, it's like, it's so not about the music, and it's so not about anything culturally like healthy nor wealthy. You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, why? Like, that's why the conversation even around streaming is important, because it's you know, we're not expecting a grand exodus by any means when we say like, yo, Spotify ain't paying us, go buy the shit from Bandcamp. But like, there's going to be a few heads that are like, oh, that makes sense. I'm not expecting them to cancel or delete their Spotify account. You could be a casual Spotify listener. It's fine. Like, there's certain functionality there too that you may find far more, you know, accessible.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're not trying to stifle anyone on the shit. It's the fact that a lot of that functionality or a lot of that modality in terms of communication is stifling to the greater cultural canon, the greater lineage or like cultural legacy of these things that they address. So for me, I'm just like, why is that? Like, it's not an issue, like, or rather like, how is it wrong or bad or deemed like a waste of time and or a distraction if it's a conversation about better honoring the work of that creator and the creators within that realm? You know what I'm saying? Like we got to get our framing correct before we could even put the photo in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that idea of framing, because like as I said when I asked the question, like I struggle with this, but like I do have to think, and as we're talking about it, and I've been like kind of, I feel, evolving a bit on this topic, because I probably even tweeted about it. Like that idea of the best versus favorite thing, that was like an example of a conversation where I'm just like, I don't know why we're talking about this, because, but at the end of the day, what you said about Spotify and about how it's kind of just rejecting and like it's not honoring the lineage and not showing the full context picture or whatever. I think that's kind of like, it's kind of goes to that idea of like, it doesn't matter. First of all, my perspective isn't the only one. So like, if in my mind, because this is how I used to think, it's like when I say best, it's implied it's not objective, because why in the world would I be able to say subjective music, of course, is like best? It's just like my favorites, and here's my personal preference, and like I like want to give you reasons why, and then like you can respect what I said and maybe trust my taste, and then maybe you actually want to like go check this shit out, whatever. But not everybody's like that. And then to the point about Spotify, like you could be a person to that idea to where you're not like me, to where I use like Apple Music, but I don't like take their best of 2021 hip hop, if that's a playlist or something, I don't know, Rap Caviar on Spotify, and like you're like, oh, this is the best of 2021. It's like, it's just what the most mainstream popular labels made deals to get these on it. But for those people, that's their reality, which speaks to the idea that like calling something best, going back to that, actually has an effect that like people will take what I'm saying theoretically, especially if I was at the pitchwork level, where it's like they actually will take this as objective. And although that's not my intention, that kind of has that effect, which goes to your point, which I can kind of see as being detrimental, to say the least.
It holds those implications regardless. Like whether or not you could do the whole forward and be like, oh, like this is literally my opinion. This does not mean I'm not trying to speak on the whole canon or whatever. Like this is whatever. But like at the end, someone's going to see that shit and screenshot it and post it as like, I have the best album on this list. You know what I mean? Like it's even that, but you know, so it all speaks to like this idea of like this like false idea of like competition economy too. Where it's just like, especially like when you're talking about folks who are like actually in community with each other or in coalition with each other, it's just like, yo, I'm here to build with folks. Like, if one of us is winning, all of us is winning straight up and down. Like, you know what I mean? And but we all do have the responsibility to address like the inequity or whatever, like the shit where it's just like, you know, like we could say no to certain things. We don't have to keep running the shit, or we could recommend our homie who's not getting as much shine, or, you know, is being overlooked, or maybe even discriminated against, you know, and throw, you know, like signal boost them because they're farther out on the margins or whatever, because like, and it's not even an identity thing. I'm just saying, like, it's a straight up like, we could all hoist each other up and like celebrate each other and like rock. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like, not everyone's really trying to be intentional about shit. That's kind of like the interesting or whatever. And like, I don't want to say like that's the frustrating shit, because like at the end, whatever, like people are going to be people. We're all going to, people who are going to figure this shit out are going to figure this shit out at the end of the day, regardless. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I'm just like, I want to nurture or create this sort of like nurturing environment. And hopefully some of those ideas get passed on. I'm just not trying to just like cop the same fucking song and dance as like other folks tend to do. And I'm not saying everyone else. I'm just saying literally like, just like the status quo doesn't needs, the status quo is not working, and like the shit needs to be fixed in some way. So it takes like some, at least a form of address and like an action behind that address in order to like start getting things moving in a different direction. You know, like that's like literally just like a core tenet of like of any sort of, you know, local action work or whatever, organizing, so to speak, or whatever, right? Like you got to have the idea and then act on it to some degree and like be intentional about that shit. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm gonna keep, you know, busting my gun basically and saying what I say or whatever, because like someone out there is listening, and like also it's affirming to other folks too. Like that's the thing. Like we all need to practice this idea of like affirmation versus validation. Validation ain't shit. That don't mean nothing. Like we all valid the moment we step out of here. You know what I'm saying? Or rather the moment we step in here. But the moment we step out the womb, like we're valid, or like get placed on the earth. You know, however you get here, you're valid. Fuck out of here. What tells us you're not, what tells you that there's some like ladder that you got to climb for validity is the systems that we're forced to live in. You know what I'm saying? Which don't give a fuck about most of us.
Yeah. So, and it's tough too, because like, I think because in that conversation you had with the Free Music Empire, Dan Diggy, on that mid-year review, I think Dan spoke to something that it's kind of like, it's thought I have in my mind, is that like not only do myself personally respond to these like lists, but also other people do. And it's kind of like a thing where it's weird because we do live in the society that is like industrialized, that has all this like architecture around, to where a very effective way, for better or for worse, is to have these lists, because people just go to them, and it's like an easy way for our brains to like process info, and they're like, okay, haven't heard of this, or oh wow, that's really high, maybe I need to listen to it again, or some shit like that, you know?
Sure, right.
And it's kind of like, it's hard to find that balance, if there should even be one, is another question, I guess. But yeah, I find that I struggle with that, because it's like, damn, like I want to make a list because that's how people respond to it. And that's how these artists then again will actually get more shine potentially, because I'm pretty positive my list is going to be different than Pitchfork's. I think I said that Pitchfork 7 shit, which is hilarious, because I thought of Haram. I looked at the Haram rating. It's 7 point something. And I was like, that's hilarious, because that's sneak peek, probably number one. It is number one.
Right.
Sneak peek there. But yeah, like it's that's my favorite thing I've heard in so long. But yeah, like it's tough to really balance that. But if we go to like the underground movement generally, like one thing I wanted to discuss for you is, as someone who's like really in the front lines participating in it, like what are some of your like favorite aspects, and what would be the reasoning why you think it developed that way, as it relates to like different waves, whether it be like style shifts, presentation shifts, in how like the hip hop art's been like created from like artists like Kai Solo, you, AMANI, doof. Like there's just too many J words. J words
Mhm.
like that one's like I feel like she's an entire world. Her and like Nelson Mandela. Those
Come
that's
on.
like I'm confident to say like that's the like whatever the future could be, like they're gonna have a part of it. Like that
Oh,
sound.
come on. Yeah,
I've never heard
absolutely.
anything like it, and that's not something
Every
you can say very easily.
facts. Everyone you mentioned is the future. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident in saying that. Plus more, like, but I think honestly, it's. I mean, the by the folks you mentioned, we're all in coalition with each other to some degree. We're not necessarily all in the same exact crew every single moment of our lives or whatever. But what does that even mean? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like my shit is like, it's love whenever we see each other. It's love, like, um, if someone's on the other side of the map, and it's just like, and that's to me, I don't know. I just feel like certain folks have their intentions. Again, it goes back to intentionality. It's just like, yo, like I think like folks operate with a certain level of intentional fervor.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think folks have this vision of like a holistic sort of existence among one another versus like a lot of folks who are so-called underground. I mean, I don't. The underground shit is funny too, like just the label itself. But like I use it too. Like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say like don't use underground. I don't care. Like use it. It's fine. But I just think like, yeah, I just think that there, with the folks that I've found magnetic or gravitated toward, or like am friends with, whatever, we just all have there's a commonality in where like how we view I don't know, not necessarily how we view the world, but like there's that too, like where there's a worldview sort of thing, but also
Mm-hmm.
just like a commonality in terms of just like how we rock with each other and like how we want to rock, like just out here on our own merits. And like then we could all sit at the table together and literally have a meal, or like literally cook some shit up together, or also like laboratorically, that's some like Inspector Deck shit, but like
Shit.
I mean like
That is so unexpected, that shit. Holy shit.
but but like be in the lab together and like collaborate on some music shit, or like on some other creation type levels, like so for me, I just find like the folks that you see me signal boosting, or you see me around, or folks I want to build with, are those who I feel have a certain amount of investment in terms like spiritual and like intentional investment in this shit. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like ill ass people, like good people, not just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're cool, you could write, you could rap well, or like, oh, you're cool, you got ill beats. Like I don't, like that doesn't cut it now. It's like
Yeah.
how many assholes
Got ill beats.
yeah, how many assholes got ill beats? How many assholes like write raps but like then just be on some like demon shit
Yeah.
behind the scenes or whatever, or like, or just not doing anything when it comes to like honoring like folks who are not, just even at the simplest level, not men. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
it should be boring as hell out here when people are like, oh, like let's do all these, like that's what I mean. Tell you, that's why I be telling you, son. Like, or like just everyone, not telling you, but like, it's just like, come on, like, why do you think I'd be like, rap shit is so boring? Like, everyone just wants to be in a room full of dudes, and so it's like that is literally the most like that's the saddest fucking life to be living. Just like I'm in a room full of dudes, cool, like that. It's gotta smell bad, like
Oh my
eventually,
god.
you know what I'm saying? Like, there's people probably spitting like wild, nutty, crazy shit, like on both like every sort of level of spitting. You know what I'm saying? Like I just feel people got like wash their face. I don't know. It's just nasty. I'm just not interested in that shit. So like, yeah, I'm interested in folks who wash their face and like,
Yeah, that's a
just
good that's a
wanna
good
build.
trait. That's a good trait. I wash my face. I like that.
Get those meatballs out your mouth and quit faking
Uh,
your accents, you fucking idiots.
oh
But
shit.
anyway, nah. But I mean, I ain't smoke for like in single person. It's like literally a trope. It's literally like a
It
fucking.
is.
it's actually fucking hilarious, and like it's a
Yeah.
thing, and I'm just like, wow, this is so fucking terrible. But anyway, um, you know, bad fucking rap has existed forever. You know, bad art, or what I deem as bad. Me personally, shit that I find uninteresting is like existed forever. So like, I don't know, whatever. Sure.
So when you're talking about this like brand of underground hip hop that you're part of and I respect, I see like a commonality in the like respect and love, not only to like other people, but to the culture. But what I find interesting is that because it's outside of like the media, hip hop media machine, I find it doesn't necessarily like fit in a box. So like you'll have artists that have different backgrounds, different like life experiences, completely different styles. You'll have like the more traditional quote unquote hardcore hip hop. You'll have like really, again, quote unquote nerdy left field, like zany hip hop, but like it's not manicured in the way that like the mainstream acts that have those labels, or the more popular acts that have those labels, like actually end up having to be, to where they fit in neat boxes. Like you'll have artists where it's like you'll get to talk to them and you're like, oh, I didn't expect you to like be so thoughtful. But that in essence is kind of like sad that like that can even be a thought. Is like, oh, the way you're presented in your music wasn't spoon fed to me that you're nice. Or, and it's like,
Right.
why am I even assuming that you're like some, not like a bad guy, but like not someone who has any other ideas other than like the violent subject matter you're talking about, which is just your life generally. So it's like, it's not good or bad. It's just like your life, you know? So I think that's a really common part that like I really appreciate. And then when it comes to like stylistically, definitely we talk about the high BPM shit, which is something that's like I've only even really like been indulging in this year. And that seems like it'll really kind of come to fruition in even more years to come. And then also just like the prominence of just like rappers rapping outside the pocket is like, I don't like, that's something that's like there's a lot of artists to point to, but I know in that mid-year review you did Free Music Empire, you guys were talking about Nappy Nina and Double Down. I found that interesting because it's like I have listened to a lot of music already this year in that vein, to where like I didn't even really think Nick noticed that. I didn't think like, oh, I noticed like the obviously the beats are crazy weird and like not what I expect, but like I never thought for a second that Nappy Nina like was having any challenge. It was like, oh, you're just rapping in like the only pocket that made sense in this like skittering high BPM ass beat. It's like rappers like her, Kinsey Babyface Pearless. I don't know if you know who this is. He's
Nah.
he has like literally like 6 or 7 projects with August Fanon. So if that's not a cosign, then he's like all into like Haitian voodoo. And he's like an alien. This guy's like an alien. I don't even know what to say. Like he's like an older guy, so like he has like that golden era vibe to like his hip hop like style, to where he could rap over like anything traditional. But man, he like he really plays with inflections too. Really gets in that upper register. It's very grating at first listen, honestly, for me. But like honestly, a bold claim, personal taste, of course. He's legit one of my favorite hip hop artists of all time, and I only heard him this year.
Wow.
I legit heard about him like February and
Facts.
March of this year, and I just like just off the strength of like, oh, this guy has that many projects with Fanon. Like, okay, I'll just listen. Iceberg Theory worked with him once, and I was like, okay, cool. And yeah. So, anyways, my point is being all this to say is that like I love it how I've already been conditioned to just like accept almost anything from hip hop because it just keeps moving, it just keeps evolving.
Yeah,
it presents me so much new.
Facts. It's a non-linear thing. I mean, like, you know, one could say like right now what's going on, say for instance, if you want to talk about like, you know, commonality in some aspects only, is like as far as like I don't know, I don't have a better word for this, I don't really have a good word for this, but like something like, you know, people have been referring to this as like a renaissance period, which amongst folks who are doing it from the muscle, you know, whether you want to call that underground or independent, whatever, DIY, hey. And comparing that to, I mean, yeah, you can compare that to that early independent era or that early underground era of like the the juggernauts and Company Flow, Latyrix, you know, Project Blowed, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? Godfather Don, Cool Keith, all that. I feel like this, I mean, it's even wider now. Like, there's just more, and there's more sort of focus on, or just space for the conversation around like intention and where you just like literally where your head and heart is at, like as far as how you operate inside and outside the music, you know. But also stylistically, as you were saying, like, yeah, there's folks who are, I don't know, I mean, like, I think about like Co-Flow, and I'm like, where was LP and Big Just, were they actually in the pocket? Like, they weren't in any traditional pocket.
Yeah, no traditional pocket.
Facts. And like the closest thing, or not the closest thing, but like something that I could almost compare to that is like, you know, some of the folks in Grip, like Feek, Lungs, and those cats. Like,
oh, definitely, that's a good.
Or they just like rapid circles around the beat, and like, you know, yeah, I don't know. Just people are just getting so utterly wild with the whole. I mean, AMANI, yo, the first time I ever heard AMANI rap live, like in front of me, he was doing a whole bunch of what you would call like, he was breaking the pocket as well, and at least breaking the traditional. I want to say that everyone's got their pockets, like even Co-Flow, whatever, you know what I mean? Like they know that they're going to land it somewhere. They know where they're going to land, I guess is what I'm saying, how they're going to stick it. But like, yeah, like it's seemingly like seemingly pocketless, breaking the pocket, breaking the traditional pocket, however you want to call it. So yeah, I mean, there's folks are like, yeah, some folks might hear Nappy Nina that way. Some folks might hear, you know, Draco the Ruler that way, or like Remble or whoever, you know what I'm saying? Which I get it. There's BK the Ruler, like, you know, the way that they're operating, it's super interesting to me. Because it's like, there's something to that. There's something to like adding an extra swing to like this, like almost like, I don't know about arrhythmic, but you know, this like counter rhythmic approach to drumming with the voice. Yeah, I don't know. I love it. I love like the vastness of it all too.
Yeah, so I love how you can go on and on about something like that, because like even like just the breaking of like what your mind is expecting the raps to go. That's something like the reason why people do that. Not like scientific reason, but that's a reason why it tends to be like, if there's a break in a beat or something different in one of the loops, it like your mind just remembers that. It's just like, oh
yeah.
Sometimes you don't like it, but other times it's like that's your favorite part. It's like, oh, that's so weird.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I think like hip hop, honestly, thinking about as we're talking, like I feel like hip hop right now is also like honestly one of the best examples of technology being used for like the good parts. Because I can think of the facts of how many artists that never would have imagined to be able to collaborate because of just geographic barriers, resource barriers, both in the fact like you can't make your music sound like that 30 years ago if you didn't have a lot like studio money, things like that. And then just like the ability to have all these new tools that are a little more accessible and just like easier to have in your bedroom, even just to like make. And it's just allowing people to just go crazy with the sound in ways that people just didn't have the ability or the means to, which is, I think, an interesting thought. It's honestly one of like the best, obviously there's negatives to everything, but like one of the best uses of technology, I think objectively is good. That's like objectively the good parts about it.
It's hacking again, you know? And that comes from, I feel like that comes from a long tradition of like, for real, like a lineage of like Afro-diasporic and like, Afro-diasporic people. Like, you know, you can't say jazz wasn't breaking tradition and doing similar things with space and whatnot. You can't say before that, like, and earlier iterations of jazz, like, you know, talking about your swing, your bebop and all that or whatever. But like, you know, we're talking also about like, you know, blues and all levels of call and response and whatnot. Like these are things that, and also just again, like, yeah. I mean, it comes from like a deeper tradition of things, you know. That's why like I always want to say like, yo, like lineage is important. Lineage needs to be honored in that way, because, you know, as I'm saying, like shit is non-linear, there is also there's like that, I don't know, whatever, like it's like a non-linear sort of origin. There's like origins to all this shit, you know. There's like a thread that carries through, but that thread,
it goes like it's not straight.
Exactly, instead of being straight, it does loop-de-loops and whatnot throughout centuries, basically throughout decades, centuries, et cetera, throughout time. So yeah, head bust. Anyway, hi.
Let's get let's get in now to the fucking Unknown Infinite, because I've just been wanting to ask so much about this record. Unbelievable piece of work. Speaking about time, it's a good segue, because that talks about it in abstract terms, real terms. I like it how there's like a beautiful uncertainty and gray sort of nuance that like colors so much of the record, musically, lyrically, from AMANI. How is, like, it seems like intentionality, it seems so intentional. Everything about the music to the artwork is so intentional. How did you and AMANI like collaborate, and what was the process like to actually, like, I don't know, discuss the main ideas and themes you were going for, and how did you execute it?
For certain, I would say we went from, first we just started by saying, you know, we started at the first square, just getting in, you know, sent him some beats and, you know, writing to those things and getting in the spot together, and then seeing where that was, like what that even felt like. Before that, it was conversations upon conversations. And I mean, like, I've known AMANI for years prior to doing this. You know, I knew him when he was like a young buck, like a young buck, not like, you know, but like when he was a younger cat. And like, he had kind of gone through this, like this his own sort of exploration in terms of music or sonics and various forms of expression. And as have I since first meeting him. And then we kind of both found ourselves back at this point of like, oh, like we could, wait, that's crazy. We could, let's sit down together and try something out. And just sort of following that, like kind of letting things be as they will, or knowing things that will be as they will, you know, or as they should. So it's like using that like idea of like universal law and energy, and like applying that to just the creative process. So it's like in one regard or whatever, I mean, yeah, it is absolutely intentional in the way that from our approach and us honoring each other and approaching it together, as well as our collaborators. But like, just things started just to like work out in the craziest way. Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of even like the visual. I mean, one, like the Milford Graves thing was big for us because Full Mantis had, the Milford Graves documentary Full Mantis had come out, and that was either the year or the year before. I think that was the year before we started to work on, you know, what, 2019, I guess, maybe 2018, whatever. When we reconnected, it was around the time Full Mantis was like hitting theaters, like it was within like months, right? And then I was like, yo, you got to see this movie, da da da. So he went down to the Metrograph and saw it as well, and it was just like, oh, okay. And that was like entirely affirming to both of us for whatever reason. And then we were like, nah, we gotta honor like elders here. We gotta honor, you know, and there's just little, and there's that, like you have the Milford Graves instance. You have AMANI meeting Moni Love randomly out of state on his birthday, the day that Holyfield was mixed and sent to him.
Nice.
After he had recorded it. That was the second song that I mixed for the album. First one was Guillotine. And First was the first song we recorded together. He recorded the joint with Ali, Throw the Fear. I think maybe a little, actually maybe even before, or like around the same time. But you know, so like Moni Love, and I'm like, wait, you met Moni Love? What are you talking about? Like, and she was fucking with Guillotine? Are you crazy? Like, holy shit. You know what I mean? I'm just like, yo, she has to, yo, can you ask her to like give us a drop or like host the album or something? And he was like, I bet I'll check. I'll try.
It was such a good touch, man.
Yo,
such a good touch.
Like,
it added to that surreal nature. I was just like, what am I listening? Like, what year is this? It's like, I'm lost right now.
Exactly. That sort of like spiraling aspect of it all. The world that we're building though, like, but it literally is. It's like, yo, you have Moni Love's voice, you have Milford Gray's voice, and then the first voice rapping is Elucid. It's not even Amani. And like, it was like, yo, I think Elucid should come in. So we both built the shit in a back and forth kind of like collaboration as far as like leading on ideas. So like I was trusted with the sonics, but also Amani got Ali, Doof, and Nick Hakim, and the Nick Hakim joint became an interlude. It was just like, no, this works kind of the best in this way. Otherwise it was me shaping the rest of it or whatever. And it was just like, all right, for collaborations, for guests, I was just like, yo, you know, who do you want on the joint? And he's just like, one of the first names he mentioned was Elucid. I'm just like, well, that's easy. That's cool. Like that's the homie. And also that would make crazy sense. What if we had him open it up? Just like giving that space, that solo space for him to open it up as a means to like show like the baton being passed from like, if you want to think about this idea of generation, quote unquote, or if you want to think about this idea of elder to you know, of an elder passing on wisdom. And it just so happens that whole like Clinton Hill rooftop line is not, he didn't know, like Elucid didn't know at the time, but he was just like, he referred to a Clinton Hill rooftop on 9/11, and that's literally Amani's like family house, the same rooftop as Amani's family home, which is like,
that's
nuts,
crazy.
We found out later, like like after the album was done, Amani was like, wait, I'm like, chat, like, yeah, they just like linked up, and it was just like, this came out of the conversation, like, holy shit. So like that wasn't planned, you know what I'm saying? And then just a series of like those crazy events, like even how some of those samples like popped in, it was just like the little like pieces of dialogue and whatnot. It was just kind of like not necessarily happenstance, but it was just like, all right, like sort of letting all these ideas float in front of you and being like, doo, 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 and putting them down and being like, yo, the way that hit the canvas actually looks amazing. Like, let's just keep like that just locked in perfectly. Or like, you know, so I wouldn't be able to make another album like that, so to speak, with, you know, I don't think we're going to try and make another album like that, because that was such a moment in time too, where it was just like, there was just so much going on in that 8 months. That was the first 8 months of 2020. Understand?
Yeah, so, the timing of the way that hit like our eardrums, given everything happening in the world, like I don't know. I genuinely don't know if I would have. I'm sure I would like it and love it eventually, but I don't know if it would have hit me that hard had it not been the pandemic, COVID, all that stuff. Because it really, I feel like our brain chemistry for a lot of people just changed a bit once this happened.
For sure.
And that those ideas just resonated so strongly.
I mean, yeah, that's how even like the writing, you know, how sometimes like people be like, oh, like, you know, I sent out for this verse and the person had to rewrite the verse or whatever because it didn't fit the vibe or whatever. Like everything that was written was first shot, bang out, easy. Like nothing wasn't locking in, and it was just like, all right, well, just follow it. I'm not going to question something that's working. Just do it. You know what I mean? Just go. Just keep going. So, and for me also, it was like, I'm an elder to Amani, you know what I mean? And I recognize that, like I said before, like I recognize my responsibility in like holding space as such, but also like giving space as such, you know what I mean? And because I'm an elder does not mean I'm superior in any way, shape, or form. So we can both bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other in this collaboration and in this collaborative capacity. So, you know, just again, honoring open, honest conversation as a means to collaboration. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, if something was done on my end, it would get passed across the counter and, you know, he taste test it. All right, cool. And then that was just pretty much go time. Like everything was just like, cool. It wasn't like, oh, we got to we got to like scratch that, whatever. Like it was like, even the bike life shit was nutty. It was just like, something about it was wild. Like the whole like I mean, like that. It was supposed to be AMANI's album. It wasn't even like supposed to be like me on all the whatever. I was like, wasn't really. But then it just became a thing where it was like, no, like we're both putting in wild weight in this. Like we're both putting our foot in on this. So it's just like, this has got to be like a collaborative album or whatever, you know. But like even the image that I chose originally was for him. Like that, like that's this cat D Blocks who does like the crazy wheelies. And he's got the child on his back. And that was an album. That was something that I actually meant for AMANI. Like it was just, I built that. I like found that image and screen capped it and like kept it for him and wanted to use it strictly or specifically for AMANI because, you know, there's like a symbolism there as far as like, you know, so there's a symbolism there in terms of lineage and also like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with that, but we wanted to use it. I don't know, yo. It was crazy. I'm just like, I'm going like zooming right now in terms of like the things that were presented and like the various aspects of the album. I listened to it recently because I was working on the book, like the last bits of the book, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know how that happened, you know. Like,
was there like a specific moment in time when you or maybe you honestly expected this, but was there a specific moment in time when you like saw the reception of it and that like made you realize like, damn, not only did I like put a whole foot in this, but it actually is like resonating to this level? Because I feel like anybody I've heard has listened to this album. I don't know of many records, even like say we talked about Haram. I mentioned like that's like probably my favorite record this year. There's still people that I've heard that are like, yeah, it's good. It's not really, I love it. Maybe I like Alchemist beats in a different vein, other places. But with this record, one of the few records I can think of in my lifetime of listening to music to where like everybody's just blown away. Like every single person is just like, yo, either they haven't heard it or they're absolutely just blown away. Like,
wow.
And I don't know if was there a time that like it really clicked with you? Like people are fucking with this?
We were just concerned about were we fucking with it. I think. I mean, honestly, like that's we were like, yo, this is crazy. And then the rest, as long as all of us knew we did our thing, that was it. You know, for real. Like, and I know that can be a common answer in these types of questions or whatever. But like, I mean, you know, it was definitely affirming to hear certain folks, like, you know, Ka shouting the shit out. Like, I'm like, I sent it to Ka.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Word?
nice.
Okay, yeah. Ka tweeted the shit on like August 27th. I know that literally because I grabbed the screenshot of that and put it in the book or whatever. But like,
nice.
I'd sent the album to Ka and was just like, here, maybe you'll like this. You know what I mean? Like on some shit because like, you know, I don't know. I was supposed to send him beats like.
I was gonna say Ka would
a
fit
very
so
long time
nice.
ago.
That would be like really interesting, like especially with your kind of sound.
But, yeah, especially some of the things I've been on more recently. But like he was just like, yo, that Not So Fruitful Wealth was like you know, he really enjoyed that one and I was just like, yo, not for nothing. Like Hell Juice was another thing I heard you on like when I made that shit. I made that shit in my kitchen like one morning, like literally like on the bench, not trying to like wake up my partner who was in the other part of the house in our old apartment in quarantine. And I was like, yo, I heard you on that. He was just like, no lie, that was the other beat. Like I was like about that, and I was like, what? I was like, cool. Thank you for the affirmation there. But yeah,
I was gonna say that must have been affirming. Yeah.
Oh hell yeah, definitely. I mean, Ka's like one of the cats that like Ka to me is like an MF Doom or whatever. Like he's one of the elders who like did it his way and is doing it his way and like uniquely. And like that's very, very inspiring. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I mean, his shit is crazy. So, but like, yeah. So like certain folks, I mean, it was affirming all around. It was cool. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, like we weren't trying to hear whatever I want to, you know, like we were cool with it. So everything else didn't matter. Like it was really ill to like see the response and like also have the folks who wrote about it in the way that they wrote about it. You know, that was like I said, the way you wrote about it was like meaningful and like it had some sort of weight to it because it was like, again, like there was an intention. I guess like you seeing work with intention get met with intentional, you know, critical writing or praise or whatever. But like when people are framing it and they're trying to be respectful about all the nuance and everything else, like the energy that's there, like that's, you can't really ask for much more in terms of like, you know, an album and press, so to speak, an album and like some sort of like documentation. So, you know, when y'all see this book, the journal or whatever, I wanted to like honor like the jazz liner notes tradition, where it's just like there's just so much like storytelling, so much there, documentation and framework, or rather framing. It's like that's what this 50-page unknown infinite journal is going to be. And it was just so fucking on. Like when you see the people and read what the people were writing, like, and how they took on themes or ideas from the album, and like there we go, and you know, turn those things into words that now grace those pages in that journal as it's being printed. Trust, it's crazy. There's something really special too in the way that it ends for those who some of us who I don't want to spoil the surprise, so to speak, but there's some pretty powerful writing in that might be like especially, I don't know, meaningful basically to some folks who know some of the people involved. So I'll put it like that at least. But yeah, just had to do it. I guess we wanted to build a world, you know, we wanted to build a world and like reflect remnants of the world outside, but like also offer some new space. And like for me, my role too was just like in the collaboration was like offering whatever I could do to the process, and that's how it became like our thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, infinite love to AMANI and everyone else on the joint. Elucid, Masai, Suede Jury, yo, his verse is ridiculous too. Masai's solo was insane. Reading Masai's lyrics too was just like it actually like makes it even crazier for me. I don't know why. I was just like, and I know that verse like back to front to back, and I'm just like, damn. I don't know if I shout out Akai, but Akai solo, of course. Yeah. Doof, Ali, Nick Hakim, everyone, and just whatever. Everyone involved, yo. And it's a lot of people actually, which is cool. Obviously, shout out Moni Love. She won't follow me, but that's okay. But yo, thank you for those glowing words, though, G. That's wow. Thank you, G.
No, man, no, appreciate the fact that it resonated. That's all I can, like you said, that's all I can ask for on my end too, is that resonate meant something. So appreciate that.
Big appreciation.
So like one of the big last things I want to cover is that you have this class that I want to get into. So we talked about it. It's very clear you value preserving and promoting hip hop culture, framing things the right way, and you actually educate it like in a formal sense, not just like how we talked about it now previously. So you have this found sound history of sampling class, and it's not just sampling, to be clear, about through the lens of hip hop, but it's also electronic music, which I do find interesting. So, given like your vast musical knowledge, experience, you could have theoretically covered other topics, like other kind of developments, movements, but you chose
Sure.
sampling. So, what is it about the art of sampling that you find so compelling and essential to teach others?
Well, sampling is sort of one of the foundational aspects of music and has built music, and specifically sampling via hip hop, like how hip hop hacked that sort of technology, you know, and that technological framework and pushed it into, I mean, like industry literally took note of what cats were doing with like the SP 1200 and like and be like, okay, like next time we're gonna like add more sampling time. Like we're gonna have to add more memory because that's like one of the things that people are like going after and are like literally like sampling records on like 45 at the max speed to like then get more of that time in the 2-second limitation of the one sampler they're using or whatever. Like if you're playing something faster and you just dump it in, you only have 2 seconds, you're playing it faster, you know, that's how you're going to get more of that sample, that more of that music recorded into this 2-second chamber. And then you just slow it down on the sampler. Then you have like the music as it's supposed to be, as you heard it, to be flipped. Right. So yeah, I mean, one on just because it's like the backbone to all, it's been the backbone to all music that we hear pretty much, at least culturally in these parts, so to speak, for the last, whatever, I don't know, few decades, right?
Yeah, at least.
Since like the so-called, let's just say since like the so-called golden era, or even right prior to that, like mid 80s or whatever, once like sampling started to be once we were moving away from like the drum machine and live band before that kind of disco break era, like, you know, so to me also sampling plays with this idea of memory and documentation, plays with this idea of time travel. It plays with this idea because you're literally like referencing something from the past. You're referencing a moment, also capturing that moment of something from the past. Like if I sample James Brown's Funky Drummer and you sample James Brown's Funky Drummer, the same part, like if you do it and I do it, it's still going to be your version versus my version.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, not in even the way that we,
not in a competition standpoint.
No. Well, not even in the way that we flip it. Like if we just take the drums, you take the Clyde Stubblefield drum break, I do too, the solo, I take the solo from the same part. You might even have taken it with a different swing because you might have heard it a certain way in your head and hit it at a certain millisecond, whereas I hit it at a different millisecond and like truncated it differently, whatever, maybe chopped it differently, whatever, maybe you quantized it, I didn't, you know, whatever. So like the whole feel of your version versus my version from the same source might be different, you know, or most likely will be different because it's kind of almost, it's like pretty slim chance for us to have hit that same exact point in time on that record to be sampled. Plus we're talking about playback speed, etc. So I want to like honor the variables or the varying nature of like even just like lifting a sample, and then also just the lineage of all that shit, like where this idea of repetition comes from, and like that goes back to nature, that goes back to the natural world, and then like original peoples and whatnot. Like there's birds and like, you know, indigenous practices that refer to this thing of like looping, repetition. You know, there's a spiritual aspect to it, I feel like, you know. Why do you feel a certain way when you hear you know, Donuts, like a certain instrumental off of your favorite producer's work? Like why do you feel a certain way? Like there's so many different little factors being played out.
It's like the sample, like you were saying about the time, like it could be you could have one piece of music that samples another piece of music. And if you heard the original, let's say you think about where you were, what you were doing there, and then you bring it to
Facts.
this song, and then you have the same experience again, but now there's like
Mm-hmm.
two. It just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
just duplicates, like metastasizes.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I like to add that sort of like quantum time element to it, where it's like you're referencing the past, but you're creating something, moving it forward. But then you're also like referring to like a present moment when you first did that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So all these little parts moving on throughout time, kind of like a cell or something, like with like its
Yeah.
different elements, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
S-
a, yeah.
yeah. And that's a class I teach independently now. I started doing it at the School of Making and Thinking and Abrams Arts Center, which is like a nice institution down the Lower East Side of Manhattan. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, and the folks that are in the class are some really ill people always. Like the learners are just, it's beautiful, yo. And like I end up like learning so much each time I do these things, you know, these
Mm-hmm.
sharings or whatever. So it's cool. It's cool. It's a 5-week joint. So it's like 5 classes currently for the whole run. And I try to make it as accessible to folks as possible in terms of pricing and sliding scale for certain folks,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for like Black, Indigenous, and other, you know, folks who are noted as people of color or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a joy. This is the third cohort, or like the third run of it, but I have 2 different groups each. This is
Nice.
the second time that I've run 2 different groups. So I have like an evening group and a morning group, depending on like, you know, schedules and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's delightful. It's
Mm-hmm.
very delightful.
That's great, man. I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
sampling makes perfect sense too for the standpoint of like why to focus on it, because I think that's like one of the driving forces behind why hip hop I feel has not gone stagnant,
Hmm.
hasn't has managed to reinvent itself, is because it's just like this the natural chemistry of the genre of the art form. Like it'll just you're just combining all these different things in different ways. You're just bound to create something that is new and fresh.
Yeah. I've said it before. Like it's alchemy, you know, it's literally like you're taking all these little elements and putting them in the pot and then giving it a little whip, and then suddenly it's this new thing. And like literally like going back to unknown infinite, there are records on there that have been sampled and to the canon, like to the degree of canonical song.
Yeah.
Like Scrapes, that Miles Davis joint, I mean, it's not a secret. Uh, that's the same thing that Mobb Deep sampled, or Havoc sampled for. Well, I want to say Havoc sampled maybe, but like what Mobb Deep sampled for Party Over, like the last song of the Infamous, same sample. You know, Logi rhymed over that same sample on one
Oh shit, it is. I
Lo-Fi.
didn't
Yeah,
the way you flipped it is just like
it's different. Yeah,
I
and like
literally when I
that's
heard it, I tell people you will have not heard something like this, even though they technically heard an element like
right,
that before
right.
in a really
Exactly,
prominent way too, which is the
exactly.
beauty of it. Yeah.
And that's also a way of me also paying homage to Pete, to Prodigy, like who is one of my favorites of all time, especially during that era.
Yeah.
And you know, that was just like, well, shit, we want to, you want to really take it there. Like AMANI was like, yo, I want to make the most New York shit, you know, in life. And I'm like, bet. And I was just like, the only instruction that it was passed on to a Lucid, and if you can even call it instruction, more like signifier, was just like, yo, just get on your, you know, your New York shit. And he was like, bet. You know, I mean, like he was like, of course, cool. And then, you know, he said what he said, and it was obviously that. And but that all happening over that, which then was a nod back to, for me personally and intentionally, was a nod to Mob. You know what I'm saying? It was a
Yeah.
nod to like to P especially. And you know, yeah, just of course I had to do it different though, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, and again, it goes to like, yeah, I sampled the same thing, but like even if I were to try to make the Havoc beat, I wouldn't be able to do it. It wouldn't sound the same. Frequency wise, texturally, it would be all different. Even if I sampled the same drums, etc. Like it would. It's literally not even the same era of like creation. So how are we gonna, like the machines that they were using versus the machines I use, et cetera, et cetera. Like, nah, there's no way. So that's the beauty to me of like this practice. It's so loaded, even like a little loop can tell so much of a story, you know what I mean? So yeah.
That's beautiful, man. This has been great. This has been beyond great conversation here. I wanna give you a chance now before we wrap up to talk about what you got upcoming, like any projects, any things you got in the works.
Fair enough. Thank you. And thank you again for having me, and like the time that we've had here too. But this is definitely extended hours type shit. But as far as projects, definitely some new PTP stuff on the way. Always designing stuff. So we got some lovely, cool little cassettes coming from some recent releases, as well as, there's some new grip stuff on the way. So grip would be a Kai solo, lungs, feek, silence, wavy bagels, Iblis. There's other members I could mention, but Wavy and Silence have an album that's going to drop later this month, I want to say, which is going to be crazy. And like Feek and Silence just dropped their album. Yeah, which is like
dope,
super rapping type shit. I got a lot of ill stuff on deck. From some familiar faces and names, and some folks that are, again, like folks that are within the fold, within the coalition, who have yet to really like get their little moment or whatever. We'll just have a release or a cassette in this regard, in this capacity. So I'm excited about that. And Centennial Gardens, that's Dream Crusher and King Vision Ultra. So that's our collaborative project. Dream Crusher is literally the person, the entity, the being, the legend of noise, and the person who got me into, who like made noise make sense to me, like as far as like so-called harsh noise or whatever you want to call it. But I'm not even really trying to pigeonhole them like that. Like, I'm honestly, it's just bigger than that. It's all bigger than that. But we got a little hybrid, we got some like something in the mutagen right now cooking. So we released one split, we have another split on the way, and then we have an album coming out at some point. And there's some other King Vision Ultra stuff in the works. A couple tapes, to just special edition cassettes to be aware of. Although I'm not going to announce them, so I don't know why I would even say to be aware of them if I can't announce them. But just stay tuned. Purple Tape. purpletapepedigree.bandcamp.com, or you can just type in ptp.vision in your web browser and it'll go to the website. Doing a lot of work with a lot of my favorite people. Some of to me, the illest rappers, the illest wordsmiths, the illest practitioners, period, of like, on this creative landscape. So I don't know, tap in and stop being so binary with your strange listening habits, my friends. No, I'm just kidding. But tap in.
Tap the fuck in for sure, man. Thank you so much. This has been like super great, and I'm just excited and really appreciate what you bring to the art form, bring to the culture, and keep it up, man.
Thank you, my G. Thank you for having me, G. It truly is an honor, and like, keep doing what you're doing. You are a shining light, and someone that I definitely look forward to whenever that pops up in the podcast updates. So keep doing your thing, my G, for real.
Appreciate it, man.
Great work. All right.
Take
Peace,
care.
beloved.
So this concludes today's episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some fresh new perspectives on the latest rap releases, as well as a recommendation for the next great rap record to add to your collection. If you're an artist looking to level up your career, getting more gigs, album sales, merch sales, whatever it may be, I would love to help you with that by providing you artist development and writing services. So if you're interested, contact me via email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com or hit me up via Twitter or Instagram at rapmusicplugpod. I would be honored to lend my expertise and help you grow your career as an artist. And also for regular rap fans that just want to hear more quality commentary on the genre, follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well. For exclusive content and updates related to the show, follow the Rap Music Plug podcast on Facebook to help the show grow and ensure that everyone's listening to the best rap music at all times. Follow the show on the podcast platform of your choice. Make sure you leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts so that the show can be spotlighted by that wonderful algorithm and be exposed to more people. You can find all of this information along with exclusive playlists created by myself by clicking the link that's in the episode's notes. So that's all for today. Talk to you soon.